to eradicate referring to this wonderful department as the Pit.
Really?
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of The Pitt Season 2. I'm David Chen, here as usual with Patrick Klepek. Joining us for this conversation about The Pitt Season 2, Episode 1, she is a deputy editor and film critic at Laney Gossip. She's also been a frequent co-host of mine here on Decoding TV. Sarah Mars, welcome back to Decoding TV.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Wonderful to have you. You know, Sarah is not only an occasional co-host of the podcast, but she also joins the ranks of the listeners in sometimes screaming at her podcast player at our objectionable viewpoints about the Pit, which is why she insisted on joining us today, because she listened to our conversation about the Pit Season 1, and she had to make her feelings about the Pit Season 2 known. We'll also talk about what she disagreed with us about later on in this conversation. But first, let's get to what happened in the Pitt Season 2, Episode 1. It's been 10 months since the events of the Pitt Season 1, and we are back in the Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center's emergency room, which is nicknamed the Pit, for another 15 episodes of real-time trauma drama. I should note that Sarah has seen 9 episodes. Patrick and I have only seen the first one, but we will not give spoilers for anything from future episodes. This time around, it's the 4th of July, and we begin this shift at the hour of 7 to 8 a.m. Dr. Rabinovich, a.k.a. Robbie, has a 3-month sabbatical coming up, but he is going back to the Pit for one last shift. I'm sure nothing eventful will happen. His replacement, Dr. Baran Al-Hashimi, is set to take over as interim senior attending in his absence. Many of the characters from last season are back, including Dana Evans, the day shift's charge nurse, who returned after seemingly being done with this place last season, Dr. Samira Mohan, a resident, Dr. Mel King, who must attend a deposition for a malpractice lawsuit, and Dr. Santos Whitaker and Javadi, who are both older and wiser from last season. There are also some new students, James Ogilvy and Joy Kwan, as well as a new nurse who's observing, Emma Nolan. And we'll talk about some of the events that happened this episode, but let's just talk overall. Sarah Mars, what did you think of the Season 2 premiere of The Pit?
I loved it. I love The Pit. It's my favorite TV show. I haven't loved a TV show this much since Justified, so it's been like more than a decade that I've been this obsessed with a TV show. And I thought this was a really strong, just like the first season, this is a really strong, just immediately you hit the ground running, you're meeting all the characters. And I thought this time around, they did a very good job of updating kind of where everybody is basically 1 year later. Because all of the med students, like Whitaker is now officially a doctor. He's graduated med school. He's a first-year resident, which is known as an intern. Javadi is still in med school, but she's a 4th year now. She's doing another rotation in the Pit. And then, you know, we have Mohan is now a senior resident. And so they do a really slick job just sort of quickly parsing where everybody's at, because those younger doctors don't necessarily stay in the Pit. We obviously saw Heather Collins has left because she would have completed her residency and gone somewhere that she could find a job. So it's kind of interesting how quickly and smoothly they just sort of say, here's where everybody's at. Here's the new characters. Now let's go into all the stuff that's happening on July 4th, which is notoriously a very busy day in emergency departments across the country.
Let's just talk briefly about the Dr. Collins situation, right? Dr. Collins was a character in season 1 of the show, abruptly exited the show like 2/3 of the way through the first season, and then it has not returned for season 2. Now, both the actor that plays Dr. Collins and John Wells, run of the show, have like come out with statements about this, and it seems everything is very amicable. Like there's no ill will, and John Wells has basically said that, hey, this is like, we're doing it like a normal hospital. Sometimes people don't come to the next, they move on from this rotation. And they're
Wasn't
not
there a thing, though? I'm scratching my head. There was like a thing, though. Wasn't there a thing?
Yeah, there's...
Well, there is some speculation. Yeah, there's some speculation. Yeah,
I say, by thing, I mean gossip that makes this sound like, I'm looking a little sus at this explanation.
Right. So John Wells has said, look, the show is set at a teaching hospital, and if you're a 4th-year resident in a teaching hospital, your time there is done at the end of the year. Not to scare any other cast members, but people don't stay at these hospitals forever, end quote. Tracy Ifechor is the name of the actor, by the way, who plays Dr. Collins. And... yeah, there was some speculation that it was because of like a church that Tracy I feature was involved in. You work at a site called Lady Gossip, Sarah Mars. Perhaps you can fill us in a little bit on what the details are here.
Well, I think two things can be true, which is that they do have a natural exit ramp for the character, that she
Right.
would be completing her residency and moving on. But also, there was some speculation that she, you don't want to cast aspersions just because somebody is religious, just because they are attending, a church. You don't want to say like they're automatically bad, but there were some
Right.
some rumors that she objected to the the multiple abortion storylines in season 1, both of which involved her character, and that maybe that church she's involved in is not super welcoming to the queer community, which there is some representation on the show of queer characters, and that there was maybe some friction there. And, we're never really going to know. They've kind of wallpapered it over as best they can. But I do think her character exited before the end of the season, when they had a major storyline that would have been all hands on deck. And they had to actually write an excuse for her not coming back in that situation, which to me says something happened. There was some friction, and they just kind of moved on from that. And
Right.
they did have a natural story point to say, well, but she graduated, so now she's elsewhere.
I mean, I will say this. I think that it is useful for John Wells to be able to say, hey, people might move on from the show, and that's a normal part of being at a hospital. And also, it felt to me like her plotline was abruptly cut short in the first season. Like they clearly set her up to have more drama with Dr. Robbie. Like there's going to be some resolution with her relationship with Dr. Robbie at the end of the first
that's
season.
the bit I have trouble with. Like, I'm sorry, you made her like a major subplot of the main character of the show.
Yeah.
And it's as though she was Poochie and she went to another planet.
Yeah.
She died on the way home.
Yeah, she died on the way home. Anyway, regardless, she's not back this season. May we never speak of her again. But regardless, wanted to just acknowledge what happened with that character. All right. Patrick Klepek, your thoughts on the Pitt season 2 so far?
I'm with Sarah. I'm not a medical drama person in general. This was a show that, wasn't really on my radar, but David suggested like, well, let's do the first, episode or two. And, we'll just do that as a check it out and we'll go back to our regular schedule. And instead this became like appointment viewing for my wife and I, where this was, when does it get uploaded to HBO? Like, 8 p.m. Like, what can we get? Can we get the kids distracted for a little bit before bedtime, where we could watch like the first 15 minutes and have a glass of wine before we do bedtime? That's what this show became, not just for me, but like in my house. And so the fact that we're getting a second season so quickly, again, my wife does not really pay attention to pop culture stuff because our tastes align so well that she sort of just trusts like, hey, when a new season's out, my husband's gonna like cue it up and we'll get ready to watch. And I said, you know what we're doing tonight? She's like, I know what we're doing tonight. We're watching the motherfucking Pitt. And I'm like, oh wow, okay. Like, she's on top of things. And so that's all preamble to say that I wasn't nervous about the second season, but I was hoping, can it at least match, like, what is it going to be going in the second season? And I've only seen one episode. I haven't seen 9, but I'm so happy to be back. Like, it does feel like a show. It feels a very confident show going into its second season.
Absolutely.
My written review of the season is up on LaneyGossip.com, and I literally call it a gunslinger swaggering through the doors who's never lost a draw. Like, the confidence radiating off this show is outstanding.
This show is so confident. We're going to give you some of the most awful like green screen in the first minute that you have seen on a high quality show in a while.
Which is totally bizarre because it's the opening shots of Robbie arriving at the hospital. And like they went to Pittsburgh to film his entrance on the motorcycle. Like, Noah Wiley was in Pittsburgh. They're at Allegheny General Hospital, which is the model for Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center. What was with that green screen shot?
I hope someone asked at some point. It's either green screen or they had to change like the time of day that they shot it in such a way that it looks just really artificial. But it's just so funny because that moment makes you go, Even my wife paused and was like, "Is there something wrong with the TV?" I was like, "No, but something's weird with the show." But that first episode it's so efficient. I do think that efficiency is not just great storytelling of a confident show, but is also reflective of a show that knows that the audience just watched the first season of the show. So much exposition has to happen in modern television because they can't presume you just watched it, because the last season was 3-4 years ago, and The Pitt at worst is a year ago, less than a year ago, if you watched all 15 episodes when they came out. So they can just hit the ground running, knowing that you have an emotional bond, and they can be efficient because they know that you have recency bias with the show. And it takes advantage of those things in a way that so many other shows can't, that allows it to hit the ground running in a way that's like, I'm already kind of annoyed at this, like, some of these new characters. Like, how can I have feelings about characters that I've met for all of like 2.5 minutes in the show? And yet the fact that the show is able to accomplish that gets me very, very excited about what is to come as the season unfolds. So two thumbs up for me so far. And I cannot wait. And I was already looking away from the television twice, which is the mark of a good start to the Pitt, I think.
Yeah. I agree with you both. I think this is a really strong debut. And I guess let me just talk about a few things that I think the show does well and that I think are valuable in the show, right? First of all, we live in a very strange and upsetting time where things like expertise are being questioned. Medical expertise is being questioned. And to have a very humanistic portrayal of doctors that not only humanizes the doctors, but also, in my opinion, this show is pro-science, right? I think it is pro-science, pro-medical science, and advocating for like people who have knowledge. They should be the ones that are leading the way in terms of helping you get better. Now, there are human elements to that kind of interplay with some of those things. Egos, people have weaknesses that need to be acknowledged, right? Like, it's not like super clean of everyone's worshiping medical sciences and nothing else, but it's more like it's more complex than that. But I just think that having a show that depicts doctors in this way, in this confident, expert way where we can like trust what they say, I actually think is mildly subversive in the environment that we live in right now. So like, I just want to start with that. Obviously the show is told in real time, which I just think is amazing. It's like a miracle they pull this off every single week, and some things lead to the other. They're balancing all these different plot lines. I think the show does that really well. The show has very, very memorable characters. At the end of this review, we will each share who our favorite doctor is. And apparently, according to Sarah Mars, that will tell you a lot about who we are. So you can look forward to that. But I think the characters are very memorable. And each one of these stories is like a little moral play or a little mystery that needs to be solved. And all that stuff was present in the first season, and it continues to deliver all of these good qualities in the second season as well. Second season, of course, also introduces a few new interesting characters, right? The biggest one, I think, being, of course, Dr. Baran Al-Hashimi, who's going to be taken over for Dr. Robbie, and does things in quite a different way. Sarah Mars, curious your impressions on this new doctor that's going to be replacing the beloved, universally adored Dr. Robbie. What do you think about his replacement coming up?
I think Sepideh Moafi, who plays Dr. Al-Hashimi, is just right out of the gate doing a great job.
Yes, absolutely.
One thing about the Pitt and the characters is that most of the main characters they're positioned as foils.
Yes.
And Al-Hashimi is clearly a foil for Robbie, who's old school. He knows how to do things with his hands, by feel, by touch, with his, like he doesn't need computers and all the fancy equipment. We kind of see in the first season a demonstration that he and Abbott, the night shift attending, have this, they've been around long enough. They've got, 30 years under their belts, that they can do a lot of things very quickly, very efficiently, very competently. The younger doctors are super reliant on technology. And Al-Hashimi is also pushing tech. Like she wants to create like efficiencies in the emergency department. She's encouraging people to use generative AI programs to do their charts. And honestly, when we talk about AI in the world, like for me, coming as someone who is a writer, who talks about art, AI is not popular for very kind of understandable copyright steals people's creativity. I've seen my own work regurgitated incorrectly on AI aggregation sites. But I think a lot of people will acknowledge the medical profession in many different areas is a place where AI could be a real productivity tool, where it really could save doctors time on charts and patient records and keep things more organized. So it is interesting that we immediately have this dynamic where she's encouraging people to use this tool, and Robbie's like, ugh, gross.
Right. I mean, she comes in, she has a whole raft of reforms already in mind. There's a thing like every patient gets like a patient chart or so. What is it? I don't remember.
Patient passport.
Patient
Passport.
passport.
A patient passport.
I
That
have
like
seen
gives the
that
patient
in action.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is horrible because it's never right, because they can't control in an emergency department or an urgent care. They can't control what's coming in off the street if somebody takes a bad turn. When you show up based on what is currently happening, they can estimate, we'll see you in 3 to 4 hours. Okay, whatever. Somebody gets into a massive motor vehicle accident and now everything has stopped while they try and save that person's life. Now you're back another hour, and then something else happens and it's another hour. So that patient passport, the minute she said it, I was like, that, and I have seen 9 episodes. I do not know this, but the minute they introduced it, just having been to an urgent care that used patient passports, I was like, that is going to blow up in her face at some point today. Someone is going to throw that at her. That is not going to go well. I think my projection, my hope for Al-Hashimi and Robbie is that there is a meeting of the minds, that eventually they find their middle ground, where she sees the pit runs the way it runs because they are understaffed, underfunded, overworked. People are doing absolutely insane, dumb shit to end up in the ER, and they have to mop that up. But Robbie maybe also sees, there's things we can do that will make more efficiency, will support the doctors and nurses. I'm really hoping that's where they end up, because I do think when we talk about AI in the workplace, it is naturally threatening to a lot of people. I think there are a lot of us who worry about our jobs, our livelihoods. But I do think the medical profession is one area where it's like, that has some pretty good case use, where this actually could be a really good productivity tool. So I kind of hope they're not, because at the end of the day, like Noah Wiley, all these people, they're creators, they're filmmakers, they're writers. And I feel like the anti-AI bent is maybe a little bit a projection of that industry on it, where it's like, no, nobody wants AI making art. And the people who do are soulless voids who love nothing. But
I'm very curious how Al-Hashimi is going to be, how the show is going to depict her in the long run. Because on the one hand, Dr. Robbie is who you want in your corner. Like, if you want to be treated, you want that guy. You know, he's a genius. He knows everything. He's had so much experience. On the other hand, he does have a little bit of fatalism to him, right? I think there is hey, things can't really get better, so why try? Like, there is that kind of mentality to him. And it's nice that somebody comes in and has some ideas. Sure, many of them are bad. But but what are you going to do? Just not try? You know, I think there is some value to trying. Patrick Klepek, your thoughts on Dr. Al-Hashimi so far?
Yeah, I mean, the show really puts the finger on the scale to start with that character. It's like, who the fuck is this? What is she doing here? You know, right? Almost like the whole, for you to be like, as the viewer, like, am I right, guys? Like, she's going to run the pit for the next 3 months? And my hope is for a character that's more nuanced. I do think looking at her as a analogy for AI, and I think part of why she rubs the audience, Robbie, the wrong way is in the same way that AI has been presented to a lot of the public, is like, look, we made the magic. It's going to fix everything. Look, let's just put the magic in. It will fix everything. And it's not as though, I think if you want to take her at good faith, she sent him a bunch of information that he clearly did not read. And if he wanted to pick and choose, if you want to say, look, here are things that I looked at that I actually think could be useful, let's start there rather than applying everything whole cloth. And because I think that is some of the struggle, is not that, and obviously when we use AI, sometimes we're using that in a broad sense, when sometimes we mean generative AI, sometimes we mean sort of like LLM tools that can actually parse information faster than humans can. There is probably a world in which there are tools, which whether the Pitt actually use, they do invoke the term AI specifically at one point in the first episode.
When she started talking about AI, I started thinking about robots and kind of stopped listening.
Like whether that becomes specifically a thing throughout the season of the Pitt, I don't know. But I do think it represents the idea of like change, generational change, technological change that may replace or alter the way you have done things, not necessarily for the better, but just because change is inevitable. And so my hope for the season, because this is ultimately a pretty optimistic show, is that I think it's going to look at these two characters as like, well, they're both pretty hard-headed and ideological in their own ways. But if they just overlapped a little bit, there are things like, they're still going to call it the Pitt at the end of the show. I think she's going to concede on that one. But I do think there's a world in which like there are probably things that we could do to serve the patients better. And I do think Robbie will budge when put into a corner. And I do wonder what is that corner this season. I don't think it's going to be a retread of his trauma over COVID.
Yeah.
But it'll be something different in which he's sort of like a dog. And like, if he does something that she says that would make things better, at some point, I think he'll either concede or it'll happen of its own accord, and he'll have to concede that it was useful. And I hope that's where ultimately it goes, which isn't me rooting for generative AI tools to become like prolific in Hollywood. My origins are as a writer as well. And so fuck that stuff. But I do think there's a version of this that is, hey, there are things that we can do that are not patient passports, but are ways of running this hospital better that is good for everyone, including Robbie.
Yeah, I think she represents modernity, basically. Like Dr. Robbie represents the old school. She represents modernity. I hope she represents modernity in all of its positives and negatives, as opposed to just being kind of a straight up villain, which is possible at this point.
I do think it's worth keeping in mind things we learned about Robbie in season 1. He did his residency in New Orleans. If you do the math, he was there during Katrina. And I think they even specifically say he did it at Big Charity, which was the hospital that lost power. People were dying because they couldn't run ventilators. They were trying to like swim people out in canoe, like just absolute craziness. There's some very good documentaries that cover that situation. But it is one of those things that we're sort of left to extrapolate. They drop a couple pieces of information. If you consider that Robbie is essentially Noah Wiley's age, he's 50 something, you run that back, you're like, oh crap, he was doing his residency during Katrina. And this guy can't catch a break. Like he's working through the worst medical traumas in the U.S.
He's
modern
the Jack
history.
Bauer. He's the Jack Bauer of medical traumas.
Every day is another.
Every day is
trauma.
another. Yeah.
I sort of saw like the strength of the writing of the show is that these characters are incredibly nuanced. Just because we, the audience, are not expressly told all of the information, I fully believe the actors and writers know everything about their characters, and it informs their performances. Because I think part of Robbie's reaction to Al-Hashimi is, but what happens if we lose power, if it crashes because Cloudflare has a DDoS attack or something like that, which happens,
Right.
I think most of us have probably worked a job where maybe we've lost a day of work because some stupid internet thing happened.
Can't get to the CMS because literally everything is connected to Cloudflare, and like, I can't be in Slack, I can't be in anything.
But that's like a realistic point for Robbie to make. Is like, okay, great, these tools are coming along, maybe they'll help us, but what if we already saw during the mass casualty incident from the last season that the younger doctors were like, how do we do things when we can't chart, when we don't have the x-ray machine? And here you have Abbott, the army doctor, who's like, write it on their foreheads.
I think my biggest objection to Dr. Al-Hashimi is pedagogically. And I think Dr. Robbie does a good job of saying, hey, let's let the resident figure it out themselves. Like, let them figure, because one day you're not going to be there. Yeah. And they'll need to figure it out themselves on their own. And it seems like Al-Hashimi is really taking a hands-on approach and guiding. And there's value in both approaches. But I, as somebody who has a degree in education myself, I strongly agree with Dr. Robbie's approach in that, like, you should try and let them put it together themselves.
And great stuff, the blocking. And they are just constantly
walking into each other,
Yes,
or
yes.
when
they're
he's at the
knocking
computer,
shoulders.
Yeah,
and she's
yeah.
like right,
Yeah.
like breathing down
Yeah.
his neck is great.
It's good.
One thing I will say about the character, I think, is even though the scenes with the two of them are brief in this first episode, they do establish her as competent, medically competent. There's a different and this is why I don't think she'll end up being like a one-note villain. Like the hospital administrator, whose name escapes me,
Gloria.
She is kind of portrayed as like, ooh, like the man, the corporate health infrastructure just won't let the pit be the pit. And there's a different version of this where like that same administrator sends like a tech advisor that has been like hired for the hospital to come in and institute a bunch of like top-down forced reforms. What makes this character unique is that, sure, she may be, a little more like, I'll tell you what to do, go do it, which is representative of like technology and tools that could fail like sort of human instinct and experience. But she knows what she's talking about. She's not like reading off of an iPad when they're doing open heart surgery. Like she's giving like guttural interpretations and recommendations, and they differ on the approach, but it's not as though she's like, ChatGPT is not telling her what to do next. And I think I just think it's important that I suspect one of the reasons if they find an overlap with one another will just be they arrived at where they are from different places, but it both comes from patient care. It's just a differing interpretation on what it means to do patient care in 2026.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Patrick. And she is not depicted as like purely a one-note villain, and it does seem that there is hope for them to reconcile. I did enjoy the scene where she's kind of trying to prove her bona fides. He asked, "Yo, so that hospital you were in, was that a trauma hospital?" She's like, yeah, but like people came in, they got shot. They had like horrible things happen to them, and we took care of them.
Is the VA even a trauma center?
Not for medic runs, but they walk in.
So that's going to circle back. Her bona fides are going to circle back. Robbie is the way this show makes you tell on yourself. The things that they set up that you will have a knee-jerk reaction to, and then
they want you to be like, "Yeah, Robbie, get her ass." Like,
and then 7 hours later, you're like, "Shit, I was wrong."
Like, the real question is going to be, and at some point, and Sarah, you've seen more episodes than this, like, and then we can't do all these different bits in one episode, David. So maybe we have to do this next week, depending on time. But I'm guessing that a reoccurring bit of Seasons of the Pit is going to be who's invited to have a beer outside at the end of the shift. And I want to go through all the main characters and like, who do we think's invited to have a beer outside at the end of the shift as season 2 of the Pit is closing?
Yeah.
Who are the cool kids?
Will she be invited? I think she will. I think she'll take the beer and be confused because she doesn't want to drink a light beer. But I think she'll open it, take a sip, be like a little disgusted, but like enjoy the camaraderie.
Patrick is calling the shot right now for the end of the season.
I think she's going to.
See what happens. All right,
she'll be there.
One of the huge developments, I'll mention, another big development of the episode, and then we'll talk about some of the individual cases. But one of the huge developments of the episode is Dr. Langdon returns at the same time as Dana. Like it felt like Dana was coming back as well on the same day by coincidence. Was that your interpretation, guys?
I think Dana had been back.
Okay. Right.
That was the feeling I got, was that she did go away and then came back, but I don't think it was her first day back.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, Langdon is put on triage as some kind of punishment, but he starts seeing patients anyway, including Louis. And then Langdon confesses to this patient named Louis that he stole Librium from him.
And I helped myself to some of the Librium I prescribed you for your withdrawal.
You stole my pills?
Louis, by the way, needs a paracentesis, which my understanding is removes excess fluid from the abdomen. Anyway, and then he also has to like meet Dr. Santos, which is like really awkward. Can't imagine that being super straightforward. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to mention that's the only kind of big personnel. There's other things like Dr. Santos is trying to be a surgeon as well, and what's her name? Is it Mohan that is having difficulty relating to her mom? So there's like little plot lines like that. No, sorry, not Mohan. The other one, the young one.
No, it's Mohan is having a problem.
Oh yeah,
an
and
undisclosed
they're both-
problem with her mom.
They're both.
Oh, there's
having
two mom.
difficulties with their moms.
That's your issue. It's like you're confusing your mom problems on the show.
Yeah. That's right. That's they're both
Javadi.
Javadi.
Dr.
Javadi is the one.
Yeah.
Dr. Javadi is the one who has the mom who's a surgeon, and
Yes.
and she is working too hard, and her mom thinks that her skills are wasted in the pit. So anyway, but yeah, wanted to just kind of bring up the Dr. Langdon thing because that was probably the biggest storyline change. And if you guys had any thoughts on that, feel free. But otherwise, we can talk about some of the major cases. And I guess I'll just read some of these, and then we can, if any kind of flagged for you, let's talk about some of them. All right. So I don't have names for all of these because they go by really fast, and quite honestly, they probably don't really matter that much. It's more they just represent an idea, right? So there's guy who took a kitchen knife to the chest. That like Dr. Robbie guides the attendings through, or the residents through, and I actually there was we see some East Asian representation this season. There's a character named Joy Kwan who's one of the new students, and she is kind of depicted as being really cold, like having no emotion. She's like, this guy's dead anyway. And then Dr. Robbie is like, whoa, that's not cool, Joy.
Can I glove that?
That's best if you watch the first one.
This guy's dead anyway.
And I'm just kind of curious, like, what the show's going to do with her. We don't really learn that much about her, but what we do know is that her bedside manner is apparently terrible. But I guess I wanted to flag, like, we don't get resolution on that plot line this episode. But that did flag for me with a guy who gets knifed to the chest. Hypochondriac woman with no job. This is one of the ones that opens the episode. She kind of is like praying for God to not take her soul. I don't know. I don't even know if we're gonna come back to that character again. Older woman who eats a dozen weed cookies a day.
God bless her.
Wow. That was a lot. That was a lot to take in.
Yeah. That felt. I'm surprised she was in as good of a state as she was. Let me ask you guys. Okay, personal question. You don't need to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever eaten a weed cookie before?
Yeah. Pot's legal in Illinois.
Yeah, I've eaten a weed cookie before, and let me tell you guys, it was like some medical grade stuff, man. It was like I was out for a good 16 hours. Was like because I had never consumed any weed before. So then a friend of mine got me a weed cookie, and I was like, "Oh, let's try this." And I think I ate like half or 2/3 of it, and I could not function for 16 hours after I ate that cookie.
Yeah, Grandma is just stoned out of her gourd.
So the idea of eating
24/7.
12 cookies a day is like I could not. I've never done one cookie again since it.
I think she's got a tolerance, though. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, she's built that
up. Kylie, girl with facial injury, who doctors suspect is being abused in some way.
Little girl.
Yeah, the little girl. I'm really curious about this one. Like, she seems like she has horrifying injuries all over her body, but the way she responded to the questions doesn't present as a typical abuse case. So I am curious.
And that's a Santos case. And we learned in season 1, Santos is very antenna up to child abuse.
So
and that was not in season 1. That was the resolution of that was essentially we did what we could. We can't save everybody. We have the tools available,
right.
And that there were different sort of sexual abuse cases in the pit, and sometimes if they were adults, it's like, well, sometimes they cycle back in and we get another chance, and you just have to. And so the fact that so quickly in the season 2 we're introducing something this charged that is running over familiar material, it makes me think the reason we're doing that is because the resolution, not necessarily in a positive way, but like I think it's interesting that they're choosing to put this specific character back in this specific situation, and that makes me very interested to see both how she approaches it and how it's resolved as a case, and how, or personally, I mean, I think we even see, even with Santos, like a little bit of self-aware growth, like when she is trying to she wants to be a surgeon, she wants to get into Javadi's mom's like program, and then realizes the two of them are having a tiff.
Yes.
She walks away. She
walks away.
Recognizes awkward social situation. In season 1, she would have been like, hey, mom, like would have needled them.
She would have charged right in there.
there's a different situation where I think this episode in particular with this character is setting up. Yes, she's still snarky one-liners, uses that as a shield to like get close to people, but she has had growth, like the different time with Dr. King, in which like, please tell me what's going on with you. Something's going on, and like, so that character's really because I think they're in a uniquely different place personally, in which they still have many of the characteristic traits they had from season 1. That's not gone. But even here, we have really obvious examples that this is a different person. But I wonder if they'll still be able to maintain that balance in what is obviously like a very personally triggering set of circumstances. So really, really unique setup for this.
I agree. She's
character.
a much more bearable character this season so far. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. All right. There's this guy named Mr. Williams who broke his nose on his wrist, but who might have a much more serious injury. I really appreciated the way this is depicted. The guy kind of starts acting out in very bizarre ways at the end of the episode, and I anticipate we'll find out more. Well, that's one of the great things about the show, by the way, is you get a preview of the next episode by what cases come in at the end of this episode.
Yeah,
right?
don't have to watch the preview.
Don't need to watch the next time. You already know, right? And so, by the way, those in this case are there is Evelyn Bostick, an 81-year-old with Alzheimer's, and Alan Billings, a guy who had a pallet fall onto his outstretched arm. I assume we will deal with those in the next episode. A couple of other things real quick. There is a guy with lacerations on his leg who is treated by Dr. Mel, but she doesn't realize he's hitting on her.
What about Boba? I love Boba.
And that was very adorable. And homeless guy who needs decontamination and none with conjunctivitis. Those are some other ones that I wrote down. And of course, the big one, abandoned baby, which they find a baby in the bathroom. And at the very end of the episode, they do a CBC, a point of care CBC, which is basically a blood test as far as I understand. Mm-hmm. And it reveals some extremely troubling news that Dr. Baran Al-Hashimi sees. We don't know what it is. But according to my research and what they say on the show, in Pittsburgh, there is a safe haven program. This is actually a real thing. I'm reading here from the website. The Pennsylvania Safe Haven law gives parents a safe legal alternative to abandoning their baby. It allows parents to bring their newborn up to 28 days old to any Pennsylvania hospital, to a police officer at a police station, or an emergency services provider at an EMS station without the fear of criminal prosecution, as long as the baby has not been harmed. Pennsylvania is one of 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico that have enacted safe haven legislation, end quote. I'm just going to say, by the way, generally, it strikes me as a little weird that 28 days is the cutoff. Like, you can drop a baby off at 27 days, and it is perfectly legal. But, like, wait an additional 36 hours, and it is a crime. And apparently that's what the people on the show are trying to sort through as well, is, like, how old is this baby? Because if it's over 28 days, it's technically a crime. Some people are just slow deciders. That's all I have to say. Okay, anyway.
I think you should be able to drop them up to 19 years.
Yeah.
Don't give me that option with my children. Don't give me that option. The 5-year-old's a nightmare right now.
They'd act a lot different if that was on the table.
That's a constant threat. I expect that like there was an interesting conversation about the baby and the 28 days in which you almost didn't linger on it, but I think, you know, like Noah Wiley seemed like he was like, who cares? We're just going to say it's under 28 days. Like,
right.
It sounds like that's going to
27.
Be
27
right. And I do think that is going to be some of the tension between like Robbie, like over the course of the season, like, well, the letter of the law says this. And he's like, right. But like, we could do it this way instead. It's like, well, you're contributing to the pit being on, you know what I mean? Like, I can imagine there's going to be some push and pull over those distinctions. And so I think the fact that, go ahead.
Also, to your point about Santos and the little girl and maybe being set up for a different resolution in a similar case, we saw Robbie fudging numbers for the sake of a patient in season 1. So is this a similar thing where it's like, and I don't know. Maybe there's a resolution that leads a different path, maybe, but because it is a similar thing of like, yeah, we know from the minute Robbie walks in the pediatric room, that he's gonna say that baby's 26, 27 days old. He's not gonna say that baby's over 28 days old. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but we have seen him do this. We know he's willing to do it. We know he would do it. So that feels like another one where there must be a divergent path down the line.
And is that always for the best, right? I think if the show at its best, like the show, it's a specifically optimistic show, but I do think there's ways that show can start weaponizing that against the audience based on like previous knowledge and experience with these cases, where it's like, sure, Robbie's a good guy trying to do the right thing, but maybe sometimes, and I think this is where the push and pull is going to be like, maybe sometimes these sure, is 28 days an arbitrary cutoff date, but like you have to pick a date, and like maybe sometimes that's for good reason. And I wonder, maybe this is a season of, good intentions coming back to bite a number of our characters in a show that sets you up to be immediately sympathetic with many of the characters and their good intentions
were rewarded in season 1. All of the good intentions were rewarded in season 1.
I really feel like
not
that is
everyone. Like I feel like there's a couple plot lines that maybe didn't end perfectly, but you're right. In general, I felt like if they tried to do the right thing, it went pretty well overall. And it will be curious to see what happens if that doesn't play out that way. So, are there any cases that you guys want to mention, or that any moments from these cases that resonated with you? Otherwise, we can move on to favorite doctor.
I mean, I do think Santos's little girl is a very curious case, because my reaction to that was cancer. If a kid has mysterious, unexplained bruising, that is a huge warning sign of childhood leukemia. So, I was like, she's saying like, oh, I play soccer and I fell playing in the house and cut my chin. And nothing that she was answering the questions was kind of immediately saying, yes, something is wrong here. It's kind of all a little bit gray.
It didn't feel like she was under duress in any way.
And the kid doesn't seem particularly distressed, but clearly something is going on with her. And so I'm like, how sad are we going to get? Like,
so that is my thing.
How sad
like,
is this going to get?
Like, what it was, we watched this on a Thursday night, and I turned to my wife as we started. I was like, "Do you want a glass of wine?" She's like, "No." Like, it was just the holidays. Like, gotta wait till the weekend for that. 5 minutes into the show, she's like, "You know what? Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna need a glass of wine." And like, I forgot how stressful this show is. And then we got to the end, and the whole sequence where she's, we don't know what's going on with the baby as well, but like these two different child plot lines. My wife turns and she's like, "God, are they going to kill two kids in the same season?" It's the first episode, because the spoilers for the season 1 of the Pitt, but like the one where the child drowns is like comes in having already drowned, is like so hard. Like, well, I have a 5-year-old who's like at the age where she's like learning how to swim independently and stuff like that, and I don't particularly, my wife nor I have a do not lots of parents, once they have kids, will like, I can't watch or have deep trouble watching children in trauma in television and movies. I'm not saying I seek that out, but I don't necessarily avoid it. And instead it's like, okay, well, we're really stacking the deck with the first season or the first episode of the Pitt season 2, where I'm like, okay, like hopefully they don't all die like over the course of this season.
Right.
Well, you want the 4th of July just to be goofy, weird drunk stunts and stuff that you're like Darwin Awards stuff, where you're like,
and I bet we'll get that. I mean, the show is very good about balancing that stuff. I'm sure we'll still get some of those.
Episode 1, you're like immediately off the bat, you're like, there's some potentially very deep, dark waters
really
circling these characters.
And I don't think there'll be another mass shooting like there was in season 1, but I think there'll be probably some mass casualty-esque event this season having to do with July 4th is my guess.
When they announced it was July 4 last year, I was Googling like, what's the worst emergency situation that's broken out? And what I was coming up with was a lot of fireworks stuff. But
fireworks accident, that's possible.
I actually have a betting pool with some friends who are also obsessed with the Pitt, and my selection, like, something's gonna happen. It's some large scale, like, we know because this is baked into the formula of the show, there's gonna be some large scale disaster, right? One of my friends took massive drowning incident, like drunk boating party gone horribly awry.
How much money do you get? If you win? How much do you get out of the pool?
The pot's over $1,000, so it's a pretty good. It's a good size of people.
Because
a lot of people.
I thought this was gonna be like $30.
No, it's a good chunk of people because we all kind of at different points of the year. I was obsessed with the Pit from day one, but people like. They ran it on TNT over the summer. It was on HBO Max to stream all year. So people were kind of coming to the Pit at different points throughout the year. And that betting pool just kept getting bigger and bigger when you'd be like, well, it's on July 4 and we're taking bets on like what happens. And someone was like, did you hear about that case in Australia where the lady maybe on purpose, but maybe accidentally poisoned her family with mushrooms that she like foraged? Maybe there's like a family poisoning event. Maybe there's a giant boating accident. My pick was overcrowded fire situation because there's like a lot of that in out in the world. And on the 4th of July, you would have people gathering in concentrations that could become very dangerous. And Pittsburgh is an old city. There's old buildings. So I was like, I'll take, massive fire situation. But we all kind of were taking there was one that was like 80 car pile up on the highway.
Traffic accident.
Like all the people driving to and from. So yeah, we have all these different on the traffic accident front. Robbie shows up minute 1 riding a motorcycle with no helmet. And I used to ride motorcycles. The older I get, the more I'm like, what was I thinking? I always wore helmets. I did stop when a neighbor of mine died in an accident, not wearing a helmet. Haven't ridden in years at this point. But I do think Robbie, his motorcycle and helmets. I was like, can I add one to the betting pool? Like, I think motorcycles, because ER emergency department, doctors and nurses will tell you motorcycle accidents. I have a young cousin who is an ED nurse, and she was like, I was like, so you've been an ED nurse for a couple of years now. Like, what will you never do? And she's like, immediately without hesitation, she said motorcycles. So I'm like, that's going to come back.
I feel like everybody knows somebody or knows somebody that knows somebody that was like in a traumatic, it's just so it's unfortunately common.
What happens if no one's right or there is no mass casualty?
Roll over to the next season.
Here's the thing.
Season 3's been announced. I think you just roll
I'm
over
the
the pot.
only one in the group that's seen more than episode 1. And they were like, so who's out of the pool? And I was like, do you really want to know?
Oh, so you already know the answer.
I already know the answer. And I'm not going to tell you, but like.
Please don't.
But you can you can confirm that one of you people in the group is correct. Is that what you're saying? Oh, you can't even say that.
Can't even say that.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
I like it.
Good.
I like it. I like it.
You passed the test, Sarah. Okay. So anyway, those are some thoughts and reflections on the Pitt season 2, episode 1. Sarah thought it would be a good exercise for us to share who is our favorite doctor in the Pit. Maybe in general there could be like a doctor power ranking. Like who do we think gained the most stature this week? But putting that aside, who is your favorite doctor on the show? Sarah Mars, let's start with you.
My favorite doctor is Samira Mohan. She's great. I think her relationship with Robbie is super interesting because he clearly favored Langdon, but Samira is his doppelganger, like spiritually, emotionally, medically. I think introducing in episode 1 that she's having some kind of private life family situation, because that really wasn't much of the first season. Part of what people were really into about the Pit is like, we're not really dealing with their private lives. Like, we're not really into that. There's a little bit here and there with different characters, but not a ton. It's not a focus. And then right away, we know Mohan, something is happening in her private life that's intruding on her work life. I think that's very interesting, especially for that character, because she is kind of a control freak. She seems very type A, very overachiever. So just challenging her in that way might lead to some interesting stuff. I love Samira Mohan. But also kind of tied for first, absolutely obsessed with Jack Abbott. Like, partly because I know Sean Hattasey to be a very good guy and I root for him. And I'm so glad that this has turned into a huge role for him. He won an Emmy for playing Abbott in season 1. But I just think that character, like the way he just swans in and out, because he's a night shift doctor, so he's not in the mix all the time. But the way he just swans in and out and is so capable, so in control, knows everything, has a fascinating backstory that everyone's just like, wait, what's the lore? What's happening? Like, I think he's just really, 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 really fun. And something about season 2 is, yes, it's a very confident show. And season 2 is the work of people who know they're making a show that people love. But they lean in on some fandom stuff. Like, The Pitt is not a show that you would think would have a
shipping community
and rapidly growing online fandom. Yes, shipping is happening, multiple ships all over the place. But it has just been like wildly embraced on a way that you would normally think of, like, literally a superhero movie is how younger digital audiences are reacting to this show. And boy, does Abbott benefit, because they just lean all the way in on the way that people reacted to his character in season 1, which is really fun. But yeah, I love Samira because I think we see in her like the best possibility of someone who wants to be a doctor. She's incredibly kind and compassionate, but she's also very thorough, very knowledgeable. She's constantly improving her practice. So I think she just is kind of like a beacon. Like, she and Mel King are kind of like, their bedside manner is wonderful. They're so compassionate, but they're also super capable doctors. And then I do love the dynamic with Robbie because he is so hard on her. Meanwhile, Langdon, fully high an entire shift. And Robbie's like, "You're my golden boy, Langdon." So.
All right. Patrick Klepek, your favorite doctor from The Pitt.
Well, not a doctor, but it's Dana, like, who's the charge nurse. I'm a mark. I'm a parent of 2 kids, and so I look at Dana and I'm just like, yep, herding cats. Like, what are these dipshits getting into now? Like, how do I handle this? Like, when they are very kind to bring in the unhoused individual and clean them up. Like, I'm like, yep, I've done versions of that with children before. Like, what does that smell? Like, what do we need to take? What were you doing outside? And so just her sort of like quiet confidence, which betrays, like, I think a much more like interesting character underneath that we got little bits of over the course of last season. And I'm hopeful that we'll get more of this season, is like she's the no nonsense parental figure that makes this hospital run. Like, that is like many things, like many characters in the show, like a shield to guard yourself from other things. And I'm really interested to see what, if anything, we like. I think you only bring back this character who had a natural exit in season 1, unless you have something more substantial to do with her. And so in the same way that, like, the way a parent acts is different than how they actually feel, because sometimes you feel like you have to do things because it's the right thing for the situation, or as a parent or someone overseeing sort of this floor. I want to know more about Dana and like how she really feels about things. And I'm hoping we'll get more of that over the course.
I will say,
Catherine Lanasa did win an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in Drama. And that possibly helped to inform the decision as to whether to return that character or not.
She's also in a Justified episode in season 1. She plays a devious horse trainer. I will always note when people are in Justified.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Right.
Also, gonna put this out there. One of the most diverse set of husbands that somebody's ever had in her life. You may be aware that she has married both actor French Stewart and then Grant Show.
You know what?
Yeah.
Godspeed.
Grant Show from Melrose Place, French Stewart from Third Rock from the Sun. She has married both of those people.
I think she also used to be a ballerina.
Sure.
Yeah, fascinating.
She has like a really fascinating life.
Just Mad Libs. Just Mad Libs.
Okay. I love that character as well, by the way. I mean, all the characters are beloved. I'll say this, okay? I'm going to just have the villain choice here. All right. First of all, I mean, I'm going to start by saying Dr. Mel is probably the one who, like, in my opinion, needs to be protected at all costs. Like, she's wonderful. She's delightful. And I want no harm to come to her, including
plot
this pesky
armor for malpractice
lawsuit. Yeah, she cannot Nothing bad can ever happen to her. That's who I'm most protective of. But I'll say that my favorite doctor, and I'm just putting this out there to piss people off, including the people on this podcast, is Dr. Langdon. And and what I mean by that is, yes, he's flawed. Okay, he had a crippling addiction in season 1, but also highly competent. Highly competent. And arguably, I'm going to put this out there, probably should be more praised because he was able to function even while he's under the influence of drugs.
I don't think that's how that works. But I do think it speaks volumes about his intelligence, his competency, his ability, that he was functioning so well that it took a day one newbie to see that something wasn't right. The people who were with him day in and day out weren't picking up on it.
I think it's an interesting portrayal of addiction that betrays our usual like blunt portrayals of like what does it mean to like be a functioning addict. And I think that's part of what makes like the character so interesting and why like I don't think it's a villain like Dr. Lang. I assume Dr. Lang is involved in all sorts of shipping in the Pitt community.
People desperately want him to get divorced so he can be with Mel King.
Do you think they were playing into that with the moment like where Mel King comes up and like she like grabs his arm in a like, whoa, you're back.
You should always wear a helmet.
Hey, nice of you to join us.
Hey.
Dr. Langdon. The creators of the show, including Noah Wiley, have been asked, are you doing this on purpose? Because you know what the popular ships are, you know what the popular interpretations of the characters are. Because again, I think the writers and actors fully know these characters' backstories. I don't think there's a blank space. Right. It's just not all making it onto the screen. But that means that the audience does have blank spaces and people are filling in the lore. And I'm like, how close are we? How right are we on this stuff? They have said they were not doing it on purpose. And I'm like, fakers. Like, I think you're definitely doing it on purpose. They are leaning into that reception of some of the characters. I mean, Santos has a line to Mel King where she's like, you're not doing your usual riding in on a unicorn thing, which is how people have like portrayed Mel in the fandom. She's the white cloud. She's the constant ray of sunshine in the pit. But when they said she'd been named in a malpractice suit, I was like, oh, who?
I know.
Dare?
How dare? How dare they?
Not her. No,
Yeah.
not my
what
girl.
Villain?
Exactly.
Villain.
Exactly. Yeah.
My third daughter, Mel King. You can't do that to her.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap up, I do just want to acknowledge that one of the reasons why this conversation is happening is because, Sarah, you strenuously objected to my feelings about Dr. Santos in season 1 of The Pitt. For those who don't recall, I was not a fan. And yes, Dr. Santos was obnoxious and kind of an asshole. And that's fine. I don't have an issue with that as long as you have the talent to back it up, which I did not feel like she had. Now, I think this season, not only has she dialed down some of the obnoxiousness, but her talent's clearly much better. And so I feel like this is going to be a much better fit for me. But Sarah, what are your thoughts on Dr. Santos from season 1 of The Pitt?
So Santos and Langdon are foils. I mentioned before, a lot of these characters are set up to be echoes of one another. And Langdon and Santos are essentially the same archetypical character. Just one is a charming, handsome dude with great hair and pretty eyes and a beautiful smile. Patrick Ball's a very handsome man. And the other one is an annoying woman. And the way that this show
annoying
gets you
by your own admission. Okay,
yeah, no, she's set up to be. She is set up to be abrasive. She's a day one intern. She's literally just graduated med school. She's showing up for her first shift as a doctor, and she is, one might say, overconfident. She's really brash. She's calling the other doctors these nicknames that clearly, when she's doling out nicknames, is meant to undercut and undermine their confidence. And, she's doing little power plays. She's really like aggressive. But like Langdon is also all of those things. And the big one that they both do is they both patient shop. they're both chastised at different points in season 1 for sort of picking and choosing the fun cases that they want to work on when they're supposed to be going in the order that people are coming back to the pit. They're just supposed to take the next person on the list. But both Langdon and Santos are patient shopping. They're choosing the fun cases. They're both really confident, really gregarious characters. It's just one is a handsome dude and one is a girl. And boy, did people tell on themselves with the way they reacted to those two characters in particular, because it is clearly a setup. And season 1 of The Pit is very invested in biases. Most of the main characters at one point or another over the course of that season have a personal bias challenged by a case that they catch. There are instances where we see systemic biases at play, and there are meta layers where they are challenging the audience and your biases towards certain types of people, certain situations people end up in. And certainly Langdon and Santos are deliberately positioned to be like, here are two people who are demonstrating the same behaviors, the same traits, quite frankly, the same toxicities. It's just that Santos's are coming from a place of extreme self-protection. Her armor is so dense and impenetrable that she makes herself unpleasant. His defense is his gregarious charm, which is covering the fact that he's high as a goddamn kite the entire season and he's stealing pills from patients. And I think with Langdon, what's great about that character is it does play against stereotypes of addiction and addicts and what a functioning addict looks like. And I think this is a character that will invite a huge amount of compassion to see someone coming back from that very, very dark circumstance. I think we're all rooting for him in his new sobriety to maintain it, to get back on track, finish his residency, and become the great doctor we know he can truly be. But where Santos has to drop some of that armor and let some of that compassion out, Langdon has to humble himself, and he is like, he's back from rehab, he's got to work the 12 steps, that is a huge humbling for him. And in this season, the humbling for Santos is she's now a year 2 resident. The workload is insane. She has new responsibilities. She's struggling with the stress. She wants to pursue a surgical residency. But I think at this point, that's because she said that on day 1, that she wanted to be a surgeon, and she fell in love with emergency medicine over the course of her first shift. And now she's just not willing to admit that she wants to pivot. She just can't. She can't say, I've changed my mind, because that's too close to I was wrong. They both have things about themselves that they need to sort of lower and humble. And I think it's a really, really interesting relationship coming into season 2, because Santos was the one who busted him. And that's going to have to be dealt with at some point. But I do think the way that they were positioned in season 1 is here are two people who do the same things and have a lot of the same traits. And yet the way those are expressed into the world and the vessels in which they are carried is inviting a certain reaction based on your personal biases. And man, did a lot of people tell on themselves. Because it's one thing to say Santos is abrasive. She's kind of rude. She's maybe overconfident. Maybe she's smart. Maybe she excelled in medical school, but she is a day 1 resident. She's a little overconfident in this ER surrounded by 30-year professionals who really know what they're doing. And she's trying to tell them that's a little crazy, right? But I heard reactions to Santos that were so driven by just misogyny. And when I would point out, yeah, but Langdon's doing that too. Langdon is also doing these things. They'd be like, well, but Langdon. I'm like, no, he's got dimples. He's a dude. That's the only difference. So yeah, I think Santos really got people to kind of face their own, when you're confronted with a female character who isn't Mel King, who isn't Samira Mohan, who isn't kind, compassionate, caring, wonderful, soft. I mean, Samira is a very feminine, soft character, partly because the actress who plays her is stunningly gorgeous and they cannot for the life of them. There's no amount of bad haircut or bad lighting that is going to make her look ugly. Like they just can't do it. But she is, the way she carries herself, the way she talks to patients. She's a very soft, feminine character. She's a very nurturing character. Santos is not nurturing, like at all. So I think it just really challenges viewers to kind of ask themselves, what about this character is really setting me off? Like, what is my real number one problem? The only person that I talked to over the last year about this character who I felt had a truly valid like reason to dislike her was like, she's like, well, I worked with someone like Santos and it was a misery. It was just absolutely awful to work with someone like her. And I was like, fair. You're acknowledging that's your personal real world bias at play. Like you cannot like this character because she reminds you too much of a toxic coworker. But a lot of that character is just set up to get audiences to ask themselves, what is my real problem with this character?
The case for Dr. Santos from Sarah Mars, deputy editor and film critic at Laney Gossip. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about the Pitt Season 2, Episode 1. We are hoping to get you on maybe like a couple more times throughout the course of the season, when we have the opportunity to do so. But always appreciate hearing your insights. Thanks for joining us today.
I will say Episode 7, Episode 9. There's some good conversation. Episode 7, Episode 9.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Noted. Oh, my last bit about this was that when I started the episode, my Apple TV just said, "Hey, Season 2, Episode 1 is up," and like click, and all of a sudden in the corner, ASL interpreter like going like I didn't know that at first. All of a sudden I just see a person, their hands going up, and I'm like, "What? Oh, is this like a new stylistic choice for the Pitt?" And I was like, "Oh no, they have like an entire ASL like track version you can find in Max for like I don't think they do that for every show. I'm wrong on that front, but I thought that was incredibly cool. That my wife and I are very confused. You just back up, go to it's a totally different episode you have to pick as opposed to like picking a caption. But I thought it was rad. It was just not what I was expecting when I started.
And we were introduced to a deaf character in this episode, but who I assume will become important. But we don't know anything about her quite yet, so we will find out. Also, I just want to say I forgot to mention Kathleen Nasa was also married to Dennis Hopper in addition to French Stewart and Grant Show.
She literally went Dennis Hopper to French Stewart to Grant Show.
That's right. What a remarkable
woman has
run.
lived a life.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.